पाकिस्तान के अंदर कई यूनिवर्सिटीज़ ऐसी हैं जो विमेंस यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं जिनके अंदर अब बायोलॉजिकल मेल्स को दाखिला मिलने का रास्ता हमवार किया जा रहा है। तो ये मैं आपको नाम बताता हूँ जी। सबसे पहले फातिमा जिन्ना विमेन यूनिवर्सिटी रावलपिंडी।
This is just another example of right-wingers making shit up. I went to the websites of these universities. I looked up whether they in fact admit trans women or so-called biological males, which is not correct. I'm going to address this a bit more later. In the case of all of the universities mentioned, admission is limited to those people who have a female gender marker on their NIC. Now, some trans women, not a lot, very few, have a female gender marker on their NIC. And those are, as far as I know, intersex cases. Though I'm not 100% sure about that, but I know that there have been very few cases where someone has been able to change their legal gender in Pakistan from male to female or female to male on their NIC. What is allowed is changing it from male to X or female to X. Not in general male to female or female to male. This is of course an unjust policy, and in the description I've linked to the blog post in which I argue against it, but nevertheless that is the policy that currently exists. I shouldn't have to say this over and over again, but I really want to drive home the fact that you do need to give evidence to support your claims. In general, whether you're on the left, on the right, or whatever. This is one of the most basic requirements of rational conversation.
आपका जो फॉर्म है ना जो आप भरते हो स्टूडेंट का, वहाँ पे जेंडर की फील्ड डाली है और उसमें दो ऑप्शंस हैं, एक है फीमेल और एक है फीमेल ट्रांसजेंडर। फीमेल ट्रांसजेंडर का मतलब ये है कि यू आर अ मैन आइडेंटिफाइंग एज अ वुमन।
I'm still not convinced that this is true because it sounds way too good to be true, because it sounds like a fairly, not completely progressive, but a reasonably progressive policy, and Pakistan is just such a conservative and backward society when it comes to LGBT issues that it sounds implausible to me that this actually is the policy in any university, and I'm also not being able to find it anywhere. But assuming for the sake of argument, for the sake of addressing these points, that policy does exist. That is in fact a good policy. I'm assuming that female transgender refers to trans women. It's also possible that what they mean is trans people that are assigned female at birth, like trans men rather than trans women. But that would be weird in the context of a women's university. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with the assumption, which Raja Zia-ul-Haq also makes, that this is for trans women and not trans men. Now, trans women absolutely should be considered for admission into women's universities, because trans women, once they transition socially, are women. They live socially in the role of women and they identify as women. The definition given that you are a man who identifies as a woman is not the correct definition of a trans woman. A trans woman is not a man. A trans man is not a woman. You can't simply claim that the person is a man in the case of somebody who is assigned male at birth without any kind of argument or justification. And to this day, I have not heard a single good argument, as I said in my reply to Kaisa Raja, for why we should consider trans women to be men and trans men to be women, especially after they transition socially.
अगर एक लड़का है, वो 18 साल का है और वो अपने आप को बस कह देता है कि मैं एक औरत हूँ और वो जाके इस यूनिवर्सिटी में दाखिला लेना चाहता है, कौन रोकेगा उसको?
The reason why women's universities exist in the first place is that women are historically subordinate gender. But trans people are also historically subordinate. So there is no non-arbitrary reason for why women should be included within women's universities, but other gender minorities should not, which is why women's universities in places such as the US, such as Smith College, etc., have become inclusive of trans women and gender minorities in general. But if Raja Zia-ul-Haq or whoever these people are think that women's universities should be limited to cis women, then they need to give an argument for why that's the case. If the concern is only that there aren't enough checks in place, that it's purely based on self-declaration, which I highly doubt, I'm willing to bet my life that the system that exists in these universities, Fatima Jinnah College or whatever it is not that any person, regardless of their gender presentation, regardless of their legal gender, can simply show up and say, I identify as a woman, consider me for admission. But in the instance that somebody goes and slips through the cracks like that, which hasn't happened yet, this is a totally hypothetical situation produced by these people's imagination. They're always producing these far-fetched imaginary scenarios and trying to get policy made based on that. When we're concerned about actual things happening in the world, these people are living in their own imaginary world. But in any case, if such a situation did in fact arise, then they can expel the student. If they find out that there's been fraud, that somebody impersonated a trans woman or in any case committed some kind of dishonesty or fraud, then they can withdraw his admission or they can just remove him from the university.
लड़कियां और लड़के को एजुकेशन में जाते हैं ना, उनको पहले से प्रीएम्प्टिवली पता होता है कि भाई यहाँ पे मेल फीमेल दोनों हैं, दोनों की अपनी अपनी चीजें, अपने आप को जरा संभाल के चलना है.
Okay, so if the issue is only that they know in advance or preemptively, as you incorrectly said, well, all that the Fatima Jinnah University or whatever these universities are that are considering trans women for admission have to do is explicitly state that they consider trans women for admission. So if it's stated on their prospectus or if it's stated on their website in a way that prospective students can see it, then they also will be preemptively aware of the fact that trans women are potentially present in this university.
जो women only colleges universities होती है वहां पे लड़कियां थोड़ी रिलैक्स हो जाती है, इसलिए क्योंकि उनको ये कंफर्ट होता है कि भाई सारी लड़कियां यहाँ पे.
Many cis women actually do feel relaxed and comfortable around trans women because trans women are not men. They're feminine. Their energy and personality is not like that of men. And so there are even Muslim women who are willing to remove their hijab, for example, in front of trans women, but not in front of cis men because they have the common sense to know that trans women are not men.
आप विमेन यूनिवर्सिटी में जाना क्यों चाहते हो? किसी बेचारी औरत की सीट क्यों मार रहे हो आप? एज अ बायोलॉजिकल मैन क्यों आप किसी औरत की सीट मारना चाहते हो?
वो बेचारी नहीं है. That's how competition works. इस तरह से तो अगर एक औरत मतलब कि एक सिस औरत ने सीट हासिल कर लिया है तो उसने किसी बेचारी दूसरी सिस औरत का सीट ले लिया. Now unless you think that trans women have less rights than cis women, that cis women should be guaranteed certain things and trans women should be excluded from even consideration into that, well, that's just transphobic and unfair to trans women.
तो ट्रांसजेंडर लॉ जो 2018 वाला है वो पूरे जोरों शोर के साथ पूरी कानूनी हैसियत के साथ वो अपनी जगह पर मौजूद है.
Why are they bringing up the Trans Act 2018? That doesn't even allow you to change your legal gender from female to male or male to female. In the very least, the Transgender Rules 2020 restricts it. So the only way that would be relevant is if legal gender is what's being taken into consideration, because that only allows you to change your legal gender in your NIC and passport and driver's license, which implies that legal gender is the basis for being considered for admission. But if your legal gender is X, then you're not going to be considered for admission into these universities unless that's the policy that it's for people with either an F of either female or X gender marker, which is not what you said earlier, because what you said earlier was कि कोई भी लड़का जाके declare कर सकता है. That's very different from having to actually change your legal gender.
A trans woman being in a women-only university is far more dangerous than a co-university.
True.
क्यों? क्योंकि ख़वातीन को पता है सामने मर्द हैं.
लेकिन अगर ट्रांस औरत मर्द है तो won't she just do the same thing? उसको नज़र नहीं आएगा कि यहाँ मर्द है और वो अपने आप को कवर कर ले. अगर वो नहीं कर रही इसका मतलब है the person doesn't look like a man, the person does not live in society as a man, so why should she do hijab in front of the person then? ये कौन सा उसूल है कि औरत ने दूसरी औरत के सामने या ट्रांस औरत के सामने हिजाब करना है? और अगर ये उसूल तुम सपोर्ट करते हो then give a justification behind it. I know that not all Muslim women agree with it.
कोई भी पेरेंट है ना, वो अगर अपनी बच्ची को विमेन यूनिवर्सिटी में भेज रहा है तो उसके पीछे बुनियादी वजह क्या है कि वो को एजुकेशन में नहीं भेजना चाहता. तो मैं समझता हूँ पेरेंट्स को इस पे सख्ती से एहतजाज करना चाहिए.
Why would any parents have a problem with a cis woman daughter sharing university spaces with a trans woman? What's going to happen if she shares those spaces? Is the idea that, oh, they might end up becoming girlfriends of each other or something? I mean, that could happen between two cis women as well. And it's not like cis women who go to women's only universities don't have contact with AMAP people. I mean, they're going to be in contact with cis men. I would like to know of a single case, though, where a trans woman is currently studying in a women's only university. Because I don't know of even a single case. This just seems like a made-up horseshit problem that these people are catastrophizing about in order to try to whip up a moral panic, because that's what the right wing does. Anyway, the final point is about these terms biological man and the use of male to refer to trans women and the use of female to refer to trans men, or calling trans men biological women. Trans women are not biological men. Trans men are not biological women. Because the word biological cannot modify the word woman. Woman is a term of gender, as is man. There's no biological way of having a gender. Gender is a social category. Even if you think that all women have certain biological characteristics, like certain sex characteristics, which I don't agree with, but even if you think that that's the case, it's still not the case that the person is a biological woman, that is, a woman in a biological way as opposed to some other way. If you replace man and woman with male and female, that doesn't fix the problem either. Because when you are referring to a person as a whole, as a male or as a female, you are describing something about the person's overall personality, their essential personhood. You are attributing an identity to that person, which means that you are within the domain of gender, not sex. Sex has to do with physical characteristics that your body has, and the relationship that a person has with their body is not one where the person is simply equivalent to their body. In terms of how we normally speak about people, we do not equate them with their body. And how do we know this? Because we use locutions like, this person has kidneys, or this person has 2 arms. So that means that the relationship is something like possession, but it's not exactly possession either, because it's not like the kind of possession you have on an external object, like how I possess my laptop. But it's something in between being the thing and having the thing. But either way, it's not just being the thing. So people who say you are your body are wrong. And even if they're intending it in just a metaphysical sense, where they're saying that they believe in physicalism, which is a position on the mind-body issue that says that consciousness is just physical, that for example is equivalent to the brain or to the organism as a whole, this is a false position and an increasingly unpopular position within academic philosophy. Nevertheless, if somebody is committed to physicalism, they still should agree with me about this, because the issue is not about whether ultimately consciousness comes down to physical things or persons or animals. The issue is about whether, in terms of how we normally speak, we equate the person with just their body, and we don't. This is evident in, like I said, the use of possession locutions, among other things. So if you want to talk about a person's sex, you don't say this person is a male or this person is a female, at least in the case of those individuals who have gender identities that they have some ability to express. And in such cases, it's simply incorrect to say that trans women are male or trans men are female, because then you're making a statement about their gender, which is false. On top of that, even when it comes to sex, you can change your sex characteristics. So even saying that, well, this person is biologically female or biologically male is not always correct when you're talking about trans people. This is something that transphobic people really need to understand, because they act like people who have never met a trans person in their life. These are exceedingly ignorant and really embarrassingly stupid people, stupid in terms of the things that they say. I don't think anyone really is stupid ultimately. I mean, everybody has the same basic ability, or roughly similar. In the case of normal people, I guess, I'm not counting cognitive disability right now, but people are roughly the same in terms of their basic ability, in my opinion. It's just a question of how you apply it. And these people, because they're very agenda-driven and driven by hatred of trans people and other minority groups, simply don't apply their intelligence. If you know even a little bit of science, or even have some common sense, you can see that various sex characteristics are actually changeable through medical transition, which means that it's not even correct to say that trans men are biological males once they have gone through medical transition, or that trans men are biological females once they've gone through medical transition. And that's putting aside the fact that biological male and biological female are incorrect terms.